Welcome to your online lecture for week 6 in COM 110. This is chapter 5 in your textbook. The topic for this week is listening. Now, at first glance, you might think, what on earth does listening have to do with communication? Well, it turns out quite a lot. Here's what we'll cover this week. Of course, this lecture is an addition to the reading that you should have already done in chapter 5. I try to include new information in these lectures, and you are tested on that information, in case you hadn't figured that out yet. But I hope you'll find these lectures an interesting supplement to your textbook reading and actually enjoy them. We're going to talk about in this lecture why listening is an important part of communication, the stages of listening, when it's scary to listen, how we may be multitasking ourselves out of our freedoms. Freedom of speech is only powerful when someone is listening. Why is listening an important part of communication? I heard a story recently about a man who first bought some land in Pinehurst before it was a golf mecca. James Tufts. His plan was to build a few hotels in North Carolina in the Sandhills area, which in the late 1800s was thought to have healing powers. Something about the Sandhills area. It was very healthy for people, he thought. He wanted to provide a place for people to escape from the cold northern winters and heal from what ailed them. He noticed that his first guests were hitting a little white ball around the cow pastures near the hotel. The locals began complaining that all the ruckus was disrupting milk production from the cows. So Tufts listened, to the desires of his guests and the complaints of his neighbors and commissioned a 9-hole golf course on 60 acres nearby. He admits to thinking the game was a passing fad, but he did it anyway. And the rest, as they say, is history. The analogy here, if you missed it, is Tufts would have missed a grand opportunity if he had been so focused on his original idea and was not open for input. You too can miss amazing ideas and opportunities if you are not listening and considering the communication of even those you consider to have nothing to contribute to your life. You, yes, you and me, can learn from anyone if we will just listen. So there's a picture of Pinehurst today. And of course, we all know all about the beautiful golf courses all around that area. The principle of listening is especially important when you're taking on projects which include people from other cultures and or other countries. We've talked about colonialism in an earlier lecture. This was a widely accepted concept for centuries and just ended in the mid-1900s, so not really that long ago. The idea was that more progressive countries had the right, even the responsibility, to go in and, quote, save less developed countries. It was a sad and at times brutal part of our world's history. Well, this attitude can still be found in many relief organizations today, in good people who have good intentions. Well, this is helpful for you to know because when you begin giving money to worthy nonprofits, if you are not already, you'll want your money to be used well. Or if you yourself start a nonprofit to meet some need that you see, this humorous video, a TED Talk from Ernesto Ceroli, will help you ask the right questions. Please listen actively to his story. This excerpt runs about 4 minutes, but you can find the link to the entire video at the bottom of the slide and on your Blackboard page. For those of you unfamiliar with TED Talks, TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design, and these talks come from a series of conferences held all over the world designed simply to spread good ideas. Okay, let's listen.
Everything I do and everything I do professionally, my life has been shaped by 7 years of work as a young man in Africa. From 1971 to 1977, I look young, but I'm not. I worked in Zambia, Kenya, Ivory Coast, Algeria, Somalia, in projects of technical cooperation with African countries. I worked for an Italian NGO. And every single project that we set up in Africa failed. And I was distraught. I thought, age 21, that we Italians were good people and we were doing good work in Africa. Instead, everything we touched, we killed. Our first project, the one that has inspired my first book, Ripples from the Zambezi, was a project where we Italians decided to teach Zambian people how to grow food. So we arrived there with Italian seeds in southern Zambia, in this absolutely magnificent valley, going down to the Zambezi River, and we taught the local people how to grow Italian tomatoes and zucchini. And of course, the local people had absolutely no interest in doing that, so we paid them to come and work, and sometimes they would show up. And we were amazed that the local people in such fertile valley would not have any agriculture. But instead of asking them how come they were not growing anything, we simply said, thank God we're here. Just in the nick of time to save the Zambian people from starvation. And of course, everything in Africa grew beautifully, and we had these magnificent tomatoes. In Italy, a tomato would grow to this size, in Zambia, to this size. And we could not believe. And we were telling the Zambians, look how easy agriculture is. When the tomatoes were nice and ripe and red, overnight, some 200 hippos came out from the river, and they ate everything. And we said to the Zambians, my God, the hippos! And the Zambia said, yes, that's why we have no agriculture here. Why didn't you tell us? You never asked. I thought it was only us Italians blundering around Africa, but then I saw what the Americans were doing, what the English were doing, what the French were doing, and after seeing what they were doing, I became quite proud of our project in Zambia, because you see, at least we fed the hippos. You should see the rubbish. You should see the rubbish that we have bestowed on unsuspecting African people. You want to read the book? Read Dead Aid by Dambisa Moyo, Zambian woman economist. The book was published in 2009. We, Western donor country, have given the African continent $2 trillion American in the last 50 years. I'm not going to tell you the damage that the money has done. Just go and read her book. Read it from an African woman, the damage that we have done.
I hope you're beginning to see the implications of listening, which go way beyond just being able to carry on an intelligent conversation or make good grades in your classes or get that promotion at work. Listening goes far beyond and is useful in many ways, far beyond even those applications. All right, now that we've established the importance of listening, let's review the practical way to be a good, active listener by looking at the stages of listening that your book outlines. So your book talks about it, I'm talking about it. I would think that we agree that this is something important. Listening involves putting yourself in a position to hear. Sounds simple enough. Turn off or turn your back to distractions. Make sure you can hear the speaker clearly. If not, move. If you're easily distracted, which I'm one of those, sit in the front row or move away from people who want to chat while you're listening. Attending means to tune in. Focus on the speaker with the goal of understanding what they are trying to say. Respond. This actually helps you listen. Respond with head nods or questioning looks, or better yet, with a synopsis of what you think you're hearing. So if you're not sitting in a public speaking environment, you're just talking with someone, you might say, So you're saying you would like for me to contact people on the committee and arrange a meeting that works for everyone, either Wednesday or Thursday? Or you might say something like, so you're saying the economic crisis was caused in part by government policies which encouraged people to buy homes they could not afford. So you're actually speaking back to them what you think you're hearing, and they can confirm or deny or adjust what you're saying. And then finally, remembering. If it's a great point and you don't want to forget, write it down. Put it in your notes on your smartphone. Jot it on a napkin. Email yourself a link. Just make sure the person you're listening to, of course, understands that you're taking notes and not being rude. Let's talk about when it's scary to listen. Sometimes it's scary to actually listen to people, particularly people who you disagree with. Take a moment and think of a person, a politician, a radio commentator, an author that you feel thinks so differently than you do. Perhaps it's a president, either current or former. Maybe it's a radio commentator like Rush Limbaugh, or a television personality like Jon Stewart, or maybe it's just a network. Some people only watch Fox News or MSNBC. You can't stand listening to those other people. Well, here's my challenge to you. Listen to the people you don't agree with. It is very likely they have good reasons for believing the way they do. Try to figure out what those reasons are. What is the sense they are making? What is the worldview that drives how they believe? Now, this is the scary part. They might actually make sense to you. Ooh. You might actually begin to understand where they're coming from. So many times people won't even listen to the other side because they don't want to take the risk of losing the convictions they have, even if the other side's convictions have some merit too. But if we listen to the other side, if we consider the possibility that they have some good points, what does that make us? It makes us better communicators. It makes us more interesting people because we're not just spouting the party line, which may or may not make sense to you personally, but we are evaluating both sides. When we argue a point with the other side, we can do so intelligently because we know what ticks them off about us. We know what their main concerns are. We are now communicating from a point of intelligence and judgment and not blind allegiance to some ideology which we haven't even thought through thoroughly. So dare to listen to those you disagree with. Seek the truth, right? We're not just looking to win an argument, right? We want to know the truth. Ask intelligent questions. Thoughtfully engage the other side. While I'm on my soapbox, let's talk about multitasking. I am as guilty of this as all of you are. Multitasking, we tend to do it all day long. I'm writing an article and trying to keep up with email. You're in class and you're texting friends to set up a lunch. We're having a great conversation with some new acquaintances, but we keep getting distracted by our phones. We're trying to read a book with the television on. We all do it, or we try to do it. But it's not good for us, and it's not good for our society and our world. Wow, getting serious now. There are problems in this world that need our attention. There are issues in relationships you have in your own life which need your focus. Take some time to be focused on important things. Turn off the music. Turn off your phone. Find a quiet corner to read that book and close the door. Have an intense conversation with a family member and let them know they are worth every bit of your attention. In short, listen, focus, engage, evaluate, and learn. This will lead to a richer and more meaningful life for you and those who are blessed to cross paths with you. I hope you have a great week.